Well, good morning again, St. Edwards, and I appreciate your patience this morning as we kind of got a little off on technology this morning. And poor Josh, do you want me to sit down instead? Okay, because I'm standing up right now, and I think if I stand up, Josh is going to have to follow me, and that's probably not a great idea. So this morning, I love this gospel, and I find it interesting that this is the gospel that we have appointed for this weekend. Whoever welcomes me, welcomes you, welcomes me. That's how Jesus begins this passage to us this morning, is whoever welcomes you, welcomes me. And whoever welcomes me, welcomes the one who sent me. And whoever welcomes a prophet in the name of the prophet will receive the prophet's reward. And Jesus continues in this sense of kind of this lineage, it's those nesting dolls kind of thing of, if you welcome me, there is the one who sent me, and then it's encapsulated. And the reason I love this gospel so much is because it talks about the essence of the interconnectedness that we have with one another. And Jesus being very clear of how we're supposed to treat one another. Whoever welcomes me. We've all welcomed people, well, not a lot in these last few months, but we've all welcomed people into our homes. We've welcomed people into new schools, into classes, or wherever people gather, we have welcomed people. And how do we welcome them? We welcome them with excitement. We welcome them with happiness. There's always that excitement of, hey, you've had a long journey, or you've made time to come and be with me and spend time with me. There's gratitude. There's rejoicing. And that is the same in my idea. What Jesus is saying is when we welcome one another in that way, we are welcoming Christ and God into our lives, because who are we but children of the living God, and that Jesus lives in us and is part of our spirit, is part of our being. So whatever we exhibit to those that we are in relationship with, we are exhibiting to Christ. It's very interesting to think about that, though, especially after the events of what has been happening these last few weeks. How we treat one another is a reflection on how we are welcoming God and Christ. We've seen debate and arguments and conversations coming out of the tragic events of Memorial Day weekend. Some positive, some not so positive. Some that have turned this tragedy into continuing to perpetuate the notion that racism does not exist. To perpetuate that we don't have conversations that need to be had as human beings in this world to understand our role in racist issues. But there's also been beauty in the midst of tragedy. The other day, I was down in Powderhorn Park handing out meals and having conversations with people in Powderhorn Park. And somebody, she was a young woman, and I were talking, and she showed me her phone. She had gone up and down Lake Street and took pictures of the graffiti on the businesses that had been boarded up. Now, there were some images that weren't very helpful, but the majority of them talked about hope and love and acceptance, and how there is a dignity within every human being, no matter your color. Out of tragedy came beauty. But on this weekend, there's another discussion that has been happening for at least 50 years. And that's the discussion of how we welcome our GLBT brothers and sisters. This weekend is Pride Weekend here in the Twin Cities. And usually on this Sunday, I try and get through the service really fast so I can get down to the parade. But this year, it's different. But it made me think, out of chaos has come beauty. 50 years ago, a group of people at the Stonewall Inn in New York gathered and said, we're not taking this anymore. We are not going to be treated as second-class citizens. We are not going to be accosted anymore, and we're going to stand for ourselves. And that began the modern gay rights movement. It forced us to have conversations about human and human sexuality in ways that showed a lot of our ideas were old ideas. That love and beauty can exist between two men and two women, that those who are transgendered are still children of God. For those who are bisexual, for those who are gay and lesbian, it doesn't matter, because you are created and loved by God, and therefore that love that you show one another is holy and sanctified. Because of the movements of Stonewall, I get to sit here as your priest. Do I think if Stonewall wouldn't have happened, I'd be able to be a priest as a rector of a parish? I'm not so sure. The issues we have about human sexuality are complex and diverse. And I'm not saying that everybody needs to put a rainbow flag on their doors. I'm not saying you have to go march with us. If you want to, you're welcome to, 6 feet apart with masks. But we have to boil it down to, how do we welcome those who may be different than us? Jesus' gospel was pretty clear. Whoever welcomes me, who welcomes you, welcomes me. And that you isn't those of you that are straight, those of you that are white, those of you that think according to this political climate, those of you who do this. It said, those who welcome you, all of you. The beautifulness that is God's diverse world. When we welcome one another, we welcome all that that person is. There's no exceptions. I actually added on the electronic sign in the corner a slide that says, in God's house, there are no exclusions. Period. You don't see a little asterisk next to it. You don't see inside for more details. Because in God's house, there is no exclusions. Period, full stop. We don't exclude anybody from this church, because this church belongs to them as much as it belongs to us. Now, I purposely chose those words, them and us, because to me, that's what we've been doing in our world for way too long. There is the them and there is the us. In this house. And this house of God goes beyond these walls and extends to everywhere that we are. There is no them and us. There is we. There is us. And that's what I think we forget in this world. So many times in our lives, the mirror is looking at us and looking at us that we think we're the only thing. And it's what I want and what I need and what I expect and what makes me happy. But even down to how we treat our gay and lesbian brothers and sisters, our African American and brown brothers and sisters, those of different cultures. But even what we are doing in the midst of this coronavirus pandemic of putting on a mask and washing our hands and keeping socially distant is meant for the greater good. We live our lives not in isolation, but together. And now I'm not here to get into the politics of masks and all that other stuff, because to me, this isn't a political issue. To me, this is a human decency issue and a human care and concern for one another issue. But it's the same thing on how we think about how we treat our brothers and sisters who are different than us, who look different, who think different. Now, don't get me wrong. I get that most of us are kind of the same mindset here. But that even includes people who we don't agree with. I will never forget there was a deacon, I won't mention his name to protect the innocent, and it wasn't Morris, but it was a deacon that I was raised with who stood in front of a church and said, "Now, friends, I will tell you right now, everyone is welcomed in this church, even those who do not vote Democrat, even those who do not believe in arts funding." And he went on this litany because this was a pretty like-minded congregation, but even called that challenge that even those that disagree, even those who may be counter to what my beliefs are still welcomed in God's house. We still come together and break bread with one another. When we had communion, and we will have communion again soon, I don't make you fill out a form that says, "Please tell me the way you vote, the way you think, the way you this." No. We go back down to the tagline I say every time I invite people to communion. My brothers and sisters, draw near with faith and come to this table where all are welcomed, all are fed, and all are loved. And may we remember the all in all that we do. Because whoever we welcome, we are welcoming Christ. Amen.